Alright, this is TurboDog702 coming at you. Really late on this, but I figured it was something that I needed to take care of sooner rather than later, especially since I'm getting really blurry on my memory of RPG Limit Break in general as an event. But I wanted to touch on some things, kind of touch bases with you, give you a little bit about my experience with it. Got my soda here, gonna crack it open. So, I mean, I guess, you kind of start off from the beginning with these things, but, we're gonna take it back further. Kind of, as the event was forming up itself. So, interestingly enough, I kind of want to start this not really about me, but about the community in general, and my kind of feelings going towards it. So, leading up to RPG Limit Break, for about a year before the event, something that really struck me was two series, I should say, that I really wanted to pick up and speedrun, but I just didn't feel like I had the time to be able to do so, were Phantasy Star 4 and Shining Force 2 in particular. Also, I had heard good things about like Legend of Mana, which is another fantastic game if you've never played it before, things of that nature. So, going back about a year, this is when it really started, as I had seen Thorum Gowser kind of picking up Shining Force 2, and I had saw Jiseed, looking into Phantasy Star 4 along with a couple other people. And, then Bowie kind of jumps in, and Rheinhold and Gerrick and all these guys. Kind of culminating, I guess I would say, with NoWorries coming into the Shining Force community. Point kind of pushing towards it is that these two communities, Phantasy Star 4 and Shining Force, had so much work put into them over the course of 1 year. It's insane to see where they came from and kind of where they ended up as a result of the work of a lot of really talented and smart people. So coming into RPG Limit Break, I noticed that people were putting in requests for it. And I think the Shining Force community, which is one that I was more, I guess I would say more of a part of. I was in a lot of Thorum Gowser stuff when I could catch him. I was around when Bowie was picking it up. I was around when Ty was running Shining Force 1. When NoWorries picked up and started running as well, I tried to jump in as soon as I could with him. Really everybody just trying to be a part of the chat, even if I wasn't running at that time, just trying to be a part of it. And I was really glad that people were picking it up and pushing to get it into RPG Limit Break. But I'll be honest, Shining Force, even though it's a fantastic game, especially for the Genesis library, I was very uncertain as to its destiny going into RPG Limit Break. And really for Parasite Eve as well, my game that I was pushing, the big thing that for me was I was like, if Parasite Eve's going to get in, especially at like a GDQ, it's going to come off the back of, people like Puwexil, Carcinogen, really giving it more of a spotlight and really promoting the game itself. I felt like even though Shining Force and Phantasy Star were better games for an RPG Limit Break type of thing, I thought their chances were a little bit worse just because of the length of the games. It's just, it's that very old style, but it's not, these aren't the games that are like Final Fantasy VI, Final Fantasy VII, these really high-end games that everybody knows. If you had a Genesis, you loved these games, they were fantastic, but it's just, there's still a lot of people out there that don't know about Shining Force and Phantasy Star. But when the list came out showing the cuts and what got in and what didn't, I mean, I'll be honest, I was really excited. Because not only did Shining Force and Phantasy Star get in, but my game got in as well. And a ton of other games that I really liked, like, Legend of Mana I mentioned right off the bat. And what really got me the most is, as we got closer and closer to the event, more and more of the Shining Force community was like, we're going. Like, almost everybody in the community that was stateside went. And even some people who didn't, because, Bowie was running and DMC Aether showed up to be able to do Seiken Densetsu 3. So even people out of the country, out of the people left, I mean, it was like Killaney was a notable exception that couldn't make it. Thorum couldn't make it as well. But I mean, most of the people really made it. And that was awesome, like to see that that level of support was making it to the event. But, you know, with that in mind, I actually went ahead and did a couple runs of Shining Force 2. I did a little bit of Shining Force 1 as well, something that I kind of want to jump back to. And I always kind of bullshitted with people because, you know, if you don't know, I'm pretty much the only guy that's significantly done any work that I'm aware of on Shining Force Neo, which is the worst game I've ever played. But I made a speed run out of it, and with a lot of people's help, we got it to a level where the game was at least playable as a speed game. But that was kind of the joke, because I'd always be like, so when is somebody going to run Neo? When's somebody going to run Neo? And, you know, I bit the bullet, and Ty did one run to appease me. But I decided to, you know, push Shining Force 1 and Shining Force 2, at least do a couple runs of them so that, you know, I understood it a little bit better. And lo and behold, RPG Limit Break really sought it fit that we could do a relay race. And so we had our 3 teams, and we picked 3 games, which is Shining Force 1, Shining Force Gaiden, and Shining Force 2, which are 3 really, really strong titles for the series. And, you know, they made up their teams, and we started the relay race. I was asked kind of off the bat if I would be willing to do commentary for, I think, Shining Force 2. So originally I was going to be on for Shining Force 2, and that was pretty much it. And I was like, okay, that's cool, I can do that. Because I felt like I had a strong enough grasp of the game, and I knew enough of the people that, you know, I could kind of meld in, mesh with the community quite a bit on commentary. So we got into it, and funny enough, I wanted to stay for the beginning, but I had unfortunately stayed up for about 30 hours previous to this. And they started up the event, and I guess a couple people had trouble connecting, and running the stream from, I believe, Rhienhold's end was a lot more intensive than I think he had thought originally. So that kind of, yeah, that kind of messed up some stuff, like, for lack of a better term. What ended up happening was they were like, okay, Turbo, you're up. And I'm like, wait, what? So I ended up having to sit in for Shining Force 1 as a commentator. And I tried my best to get as much rest as I could during Gaiden, which was like 3 hours, and then I had to put in another shift for Shining Force 2. That being said, the event went really well. It was pretty awesome. Had some interesting things happen to it, especially during Shining Force 2. Thorum had a real problem with one of his save files that cost about an hour, which sucked. But, you know, I think everything went pretty well with there. What I tended to do is I tended to be a little bit of an information dump, but more or less I tried to feed questions, because I think that's one of the really important things to do when you're doing commentary. I always see it as there's 3 different commentators. So you have your shoutcaster, who just calls play-by-play pretty much. You have your information guy, which are your 2 most important people. Your information guy is supposed to know basically everything there is to know and be able to explain it to people. Your shoutcaster is supposed to be able to call play-by-play. And then the third person, which kind of is part of the shoutcaster, and that's why it's usually only 2 people calling and not 3. But I think a really important job if you get a third person is to have that person be able to ask questions. You know, be able to express the questions that even if they know the answer, the audience may not know. Make it accessible to people. And that's really the role that I feel kind of most in tune with. I do enjoy doing things from a technical standpoint and explaining them, but I think that it's important to feed the right questions. And I think that's something that's ignored a lot of the time. So one of the big things that we came out of the event was, it was like, you know, we were kind of talking over each other, which was unfortunate, but when you had 3 people on the call and no real way to kind of like tag in people, other than, again, asking a question and directing it towards somebody, you're going to have people talking over one another. There's problems with the chat server, things like that. And I know that frustrated NoWorries at one point because it sounded like I was talking over him, I guess, but it wasn't that. It was either the delay or he was muted or Discord being Discord. But regardless, we had a really cool experience with that, and it really pushed our motivation to understand what we needed to do to present this in the best light possible at RPG Limit Break. So let's go ahead and move forward. So that's kind of the precursor to all of this. Okay. When it comes to the event itself, we actually I'll do a little bit of more precursor. I did hold one event for myself where I tried to raise funds to get myself and Bowie and DMC8r to the event, cover travel costs. That was the beginning of Turbo's Rad Marathons, which, by the way, I am planning on continuing. It's just, I plan on doing like a semi-regular kind of casual speed event, and we really wanted to push it as something that doesn't always have a cause to donate to, but in this case, you know, I felt like it was warranted to get people there so that they could potentially earn more money for others. So we did that. We got some money. People kind of banded together to get DMC8r and Bowie in there, and I chipped in as well. And we managed to start another event there and get that taken care of, which was awesome. And that was kind of spearheaded by both Gerrick and Rhienhold to kind of get that off the ground, so that was awesome that they were able to put that together and really show initiative to get people together and make sure they could make it. So coming into the event, so I ended up taking a flight, and I got a pretty good deal on tickets, I would say. I think I got a $400 for both ways, so, you know, $400 total to get there and back. And when you're counting check bags, it's gonna, and, you know, little expenses like buying food at the airport or getting something, it'll cost you it probably cost me around $480 or so. In total for the travel through air. The thing that killed me is I brought probably about 100 pounds of gear. This was a big mistake on my part, because I was like, man, I want to bring all this stuff because I don't know what's going to be there to do, and I want to make sure I have a variety of things to do. Take my advice. If you're going to go to a major event, there's going to be things to do. So the main thing that you want to bring is what you need to bring, as far as like if you need to bring a system or your game or whatever, make sure you bring that. Maybe like, I'd say maybe bring like one extra control. If you have like a preference towards controllers, maybe bring one extra. That's up to you. But only bring what you need, and then maybe like one extra thing. So in my case, if I had to do it over again, I probably would have brought my PS2 and a bunch of games for that. But I ended up bringing like my Xbox, a laptop which I needed for an interview, which I'll cover later, and like, I think one other thing. I think my DS. So I way overbrought stuff for the event, which was kind of silly of me, but, you know, lesson learned. I'll bring less next time I travel that far of a distance, but regardless, I have like 100 pounds of gear that I'm carrying through airport, and it is really weighing me down. But I ended up getting through the flight. Everything was fine there. But then after picking up my check bag and everything, 100 pounds of gear, I hit the light rail. And it takes me a little bit to find the light rail, but I got to it and I was on it. And let me tell you, the light rail, yeah. If I had to do it all over again, I would definitely would have gotten an Uber, because it wasn't that far to the venue. Taking the light rail, I took it, ended up getting off at the wrong stop, got back on it, went too far one way because I didn't understand that when I got off to change lines, I actually had to change lines going the other direction. Like I had to go to the other side of the platform to go the other way on the next line. So what should have taken me maybe like 30 minutes to get to the venue ended up taking me probably about an hour 20, which sucked. Especially since, again, I'm holding around this 100 pounds of gear, and it's like, I hate to sound like super suspicious, but I really never feel comfortable holding that much stuff around me, because I have to keep track of it, and especially on like a public transit in a place that I don't know, like, you know, it's a lot of stuff to keep track of, and you don't want to get into trouble. Let's put it that way. I had already broken my glasses in a previous scuffle before the event, I didn't need to lose even more money on that. And, you know, there's some pretty shady motherfuckers on the light rail. Let's put it that way. You know, obviously there's some honest, good-to-God people who just want to, you know, they just don't have the ability to have a car, or they want to get across town. You know, they're just trying to find a nice public transportation. But then there's some shady fuckers, and I think you guys know the ones. And it seemed like I caught the cars that always had those people, or the cars in which those people always wanted to come and sit inside of it. You know? Which was pretty, once again, disconcerting for myself. So I finally got towards the venue, and I didn't realize this at first, but apparently I needed to walk a significant distance from the light rail from where I got off to get to the venue, so I ended up taking the long way around. So here I am. It's raining outside. I've just gotten off of a flight. I had been up for probably maybe 16 hours, unfortunately. Like, I had a hard time sleeping. And I'm carrying around 100 pounds of gear in, like, not torrential rain, but a pretty decent rain pour. And I walked probably over half a mile to get to the venue and get checked in. And I actually went too early because I actually had to wait a couple hours before I checked in. But we got in there, got everything checked in. I'm beat. I've been carrying around this shit, like, all over. But at least I'm there at the venue, you know. And I got to go down and check in with people. I got to talk to Vooligen briefly, which was, you know, I knew that Vooligen, unlike a California-thon, he was going to be running a lot of the tech center stuff, so I wasn't going to get to see him a lot. So, you know, at least touching bases with him, talking with him for, you know, an hour or something was cool. We did a little bit of tests with the PSTV, you know, shot the shit a little bit. Talked with some of the other people that were there as well, which was cool. But, you know, just kind of getting acclimatized, set up. Let's see what else. I'm kind of shooting off of a outline here, but there's going to be things that I forget and things that I just don't remember well enough. But, you know, I got to check in. So Gerrick and Rheinhold actually ended up picking up DMC Aether in Texas and kind of driving him up there. So they had a nice long road trip, and I got to meet all them. Really cool guys. I'll kind of touch on that more later, but it was really pretty sweet to be able to see people, you know, that are part of the community that you don't really get to interact with that much, especially in a game like Shining Force where they kind of need to focus on what's happening for the most part and paying attention to notes and such. Leading up to the event, I was actually really fortunate that a fellow Guacamelee runner, Anil8r, wanted to go. And so I ended up rooming with him and NoWorries, because NoWorries kind of needed somebody to room with as well. So we made a pretty good 3 going into it, and that was a really nice setup, I think. I ended up meeting them. Apparently Anil8r and NoWorries caught the same plane to get over there, and you know, it was cool to be able to finally meet these guys and, you know, shake their hand. You know, Anil8r's somebody that I really respect coming from his background with Guacamelee, going to the GDQs, representing us, and just he's a really strong gamer in general. And then NoWorries, who really brought a ton of new strats and a new analytical strategy to the Shining Force games for the community, was really cool to be able to have him there and be able to pick his brain at times about certain things. A really cool guy to kind of talk to if you ever are interested in Shining Force or strategies therein. Really knowledgeable, and, you know, he seems to like to kind of talk about it and discuss different strategies and stuff, which is cool. Upon meeting NoWorries, I don't want to get too far into it because, you know, I don't know how private it is, but I know NoWorries had been having some health issues coming into the event, and, you know, oftentimes he would talk about, like, you know, you guys don't know how lucky you are to, like, be as healthy as you are. And, you know, I don't know all of the details regarding his health issues, but I know he recently had surgery regarding something And I was really glad that he could make the event, though. And you could really tell, like, how enthusiastic he was to be able to be there and to be able to, you know, go ahead and meet people and just, you know, be with people that shared the same passion as him. Let's put it that way. Annihilator, basically on his Vita almost the entire weekend. I forget the RPG he was playing, but I know he was deeply into playing Severed, which is a Vita exclusive game that Drinkbox made. Pretty cool stuff. He got to show it to me briefly. If you're interested in kind of a fun little game, it seemed pretty awesome, so take a look at that. Later on, Bowie came in. So Bowie's a Brit, and the one thing that really stood out to me when I first met him that was hilarious was just basically the fucking first thing that I see from him is just like, so where's some tea? Where can I get some tea? And we're like, oh, okay, well, there's some tea right here. There's some packets. There's some boiling water, like, in the thing. And he's like, okay, so where's some milk? And we're like, well, they don't have milk. It's not breakfast hours. You know, they put it away. And he's like, what do you mean no milk? There's no milk. I gotta find milk for my fucking tea. Gotta get some tea. Tea break. Well, how could they not have any milk? I'm gonna go up to the front counter and ask them for milk. You know, complain about this. Are they mad? Just ridiculous. Like, just the most stereotypically British thing to, like, stick at somebody when you first meet them. And it's just hilarious to me that that's the first interaction that a lot of us had with him. So we got kind of settled in. Something that I didn't know that I was going to be... I signed up for the volunteer staff, but I had never heard anything as far as emails or whatever, as far as what I was going to do. Actually found out at the event there was a schedule that apparently was posted that I just wasn't made aware of. And I found out that, you know, I was going to be hosting and doing a donation station for a little bit of time. And it's during that time when I was kind of figuring out what was happening. I think it was Vuligin tipped me off, and he was like, yeah, go out and go see BobtheNinjaGoldfish. Talk to him about it. He's done a lot of these things. So I got to meet Bob, and that's a great dude. Like, you know, I got to talk to him kind of at the beginning, and my first inclination, what I told him, he's like, yeah, it's really easy to do this stuff. And I was like, no, don't tell me it's easy. Treat me like I'm an idiot until I prove you otherwise. And that's always been my mentality going into things, is because there's so many small things that people don't tell you that they think is just kind of like, oh, he'll know to do this, or no, he'll know to do that, or like something efficiency-wise to do, that you pick up over time that you just don't think to tell people. And so I always tell him, like, just treat me like I'm fucking stupid. And, you know, I'll pick up on the stuff as I go, but I'd rather be as prepped as possible going into it. But, and he said, he's like, you know, he's like, yeah, I like that. I can respect that. And, you know, I asked him for tips. We kind of did the rundown of what you need to do as a host and everything. And he was really open and, you know, I put down cheerful here. Cheerful is probably the wrong word, but he's very open, communicates very well towards people, tries to be as welcoming as possible. And honestly, like, Bob was a real highlight of the trip, because it was really awesome to be able to, you know, if I didn't have anything else to do or whatever, or if I was just walking around and other people were busy, you know, I hate to say he's like the backup guy, because that sounds like a really shitty thing, but like Bob was always there to, you know, kind of shoot the shit with, talk around, pick his brain about things. So that was really awesome to have him at the event and to be able to talk to him. And, you know, if you're on the fence about ever volunteering, just sign up, you know. It's real easy. You know, they're willing to teach you what to do. And oftentimes, like, I remember we had a tech meeting. And I was like, you know what, even though I'm not going to be on tech crew, I want to sit in on it, so I at least get an idea of what's happening. Funny side story. They called out in the practice room, hey, we're having a tech meeting. So I was like, okay, I'll go over there. So I killed 2 races at the event. And this was the first one. They were having a maybe 6-man Earthbound race. And unfortunately, I don't remember who I screwed over, but I accidentally kicked out the power cord for one of the guy's SNESes. because so like let's say I'm like looking at the TV that the SNES was on. So the SNES is on this side. For some reason, they decided to route the power cord not underneath the table, but to route it behind them to the other one. And it ended up kicking that cord and unplugging the system, so that killed that. That being said, the guy was headed to the tech station anyway, so he was out of the race kind of regardless, because we had like a 10-minute tech talk, so... You know, I mentioned it to him immediately. I was like, I kind of owe you a beer because I kicked it out. He's like, yeah, it's fine. But I ended up sitting there, going to the tech station, kind of learning a little bit about it, understanding what was going to happen, things like that, which is really important. If you're a host, I would definitely recommend that as well, just so that, like, if the guy panics or whatever, or if you just get a kind of general idea of how things are supposed to flow from the tech station. Don't tell them what to do, but, you know, like, if something's struggling, or if you're like, hey, I need to be muted or whatever, you need to know that that's a signal you need to give or something like that. Just good skills to pick up. But like I said, give it a try if you're on the fence about volunteering at one of these events, because it's not hard. And on top of that, it can be pretty fun, especially if you're on the right cast of games, you know. Let's see. So, hanging out. So, jumping back to Rheinhold and Gerrick. So, Rheinhold and Gerrick are shining boys. And, you know, Gerrick's done quite a few other things, like for these Shining Hearts and stuff. But I will mention these two guys. So I mentioned Bob was a real standout for me. Rheinhold and Gerrick, I think, made this trip for a lot of people. Aside from getting Bowie and DMC8r there, or assisting and helping them get there, both of these guys helped out a lot of people. Like, having access to a car to be able to get to places, being willing to drive, being willing to put aside some of their time and help out other people. I know Rhienhold basically opened his suite room to people to kind of like chill out, relax, talk, things like that. They did a lot to make this trip enjoyable for a lot of people and really relieve stress on people. Also, just really cool. I mentioned Gerrick, you know, kind of talking about speed games with him. That was pretty awesome. It was awesome talking to Rheinhold about kind of game collecting and things like that. He actually helped me out. He did me a solid by, you know, really cleaning up a couple of games that I picked up at one of the retro game shops there. He did a really good job of that, and I'm really glad that he was able to be there. He brought kind of his toolkit with him, which was pretty awesome. So he got to kind of help out some people with some tech issues. I believe he also handed out Dragondarch as Yeti, and I know Dragondarch was really pleased with that and happy that he was able to get a hold of a microphone of pretty good quality. So I mentioned quite a bit about Rheinhold. Gerrick, you know, I'm glad Gerrick could make it, let's put it that way, because it seemed like at the time he came, and for a little bit of time afterward, he was having a real rough time, kind of, in his personal life. And, you know, sometimes it's important to just be able to get out and have a good time in other places and get your mind off of things and, you know, meet people. And, you know, it was fun to just bullshit around with him, you know. He was basically the funny guy more often than not, and kind of pushing jokes and spurring conversation and stuff. And he really pushed to get people together. It's I have kind of a depressing story but I thought it was kind of funny. Was I know near the end of the event, Gerrick and a couple other people tried to organize getting a ton of people to go out to a restaurant and kind of eat together. Problem is that we had a really hard time finding a restaurant that was good, that could seat like 20 people, because we had like 20 people going. It turned originally, I think, from like 7 people to like 10 to 15 to like 20. So this thing just grew out of control. And everybody was mentioning like, man, I just don't want to get pizza again. I just don't want to get pizza. So we tried we went to a Mexican restaurant, something Iguana. Prosentia mentioned it as an option. They had a line out the door. We saw a Mexican restaurant next door that was basically empty. our reasoning, or at least the reasoning of the people that were making this decision on where to eat, was like, how bad does that restaurant need to be for there to be no one in their parking lot but everyone in the other in the other restaurant, like the line out the door? Because, you know, you've got to think, like, there'd be some people in that restaurant that are like, you know what, I don't want to wait an hour, let's just go across the street. So either they were that good or something was wrong with the restaurant, and we decided to go elsewhere. We tried a couple other places, one of which was basically like a taco shop down the hall, and they were like, yeah, we can take 20 people. They could not take 20 people. Not a chance. We went to kind of a brew house. Unfortunately, they were stacked for that day as well. You know, forget 20 people. You know, getting 5 people in was tough, and NoWorries was getting visibly perturbed by this as well. He's like, you know what, just screw it. Let's just go to the bar and we'll just split up into groups of 5. And they were like, no, everybody wants to get together, you know. And so everybody's like debating and arguing where we should go. And some of the guys go to the Italian restaurant next door. The hilarious thing is the Italian restaurant wasn't really an Italian restaurant. It was basically a pizzeria. So we went from, we just don't want to eat pizza, to failing to going to 5 different places and then ending up eating pizza anyway. It was good pizza, but, you know, it's, you know, there were guys there that had eaten pizza for 5 days straight. They wanted something different. So, like, I thought that was kind of funny, and we all had a pretty good time there. Gerrick was, I don't know how I would explain it. Gerrick was pretty displeased with it because he wanted everybody to get together, and it was unfortunate that some people were getting upset and stuff, and I guess he kind of took that personally. A lot of people were concerned about it because he kind of like went off on a walk or whatever. I don't know what was happening with that. The thing is, for me, is I basically, because I know that he was kind of standoffish about it, I like basically talked to him and I was like, are you fine? Like, is everything gonna be okay? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, you know, I tried to be very straight and direct with him. I was like, are you gonna be alright? Is this cool? And he's like, yes. And I was like, alright. Then I hear people getting concerned about it, and I'm just like, so here's me. If there's an issue, I want to know so that I can work it out. Or at least try to. Or at least give some sort of comfort in some capacity. If someone tells me, if I speak with them frankly, and they tell me it's fine, it's okay, he's a grown fucking man. You know, like, that tells me, you know what, if there is an issue, it's not something I can take care of. He knows that I'm paying attention, that I'm not just disregarding him. He's a grown man, he can take care of it, he'll be fine. He just needs to blow off some steam or whatever. And, you know, people were just concerned about it, and, you know, that was me. Like, I was just like, dude, just, he'll be fine. And, you know, I hope that Gerrick's doing a lot better now. I know the last time I talked to him, he said things were going a little bit better, which was nice. And hopefully that's continued to go uphill for him. Well, uphill, downhill. Go up, but go downhill so it's easy. Whatever. But, yeah, so that was the pizza story. So let's put it that way. And then, well, what's funny is even after we went to the pizzeria, we ended up going to the bar and drinking and, you know, just kind of chilling out, relaxing. It looked like Gerrick kind of was letting things go at that point, and, you know, we got to relax, talk brew a little bit, you know, get a couple of nice drinks before heading back to the venue, which was awesome. Another thing, we also, so, like, the highlights of my trip seem to be food places a lot. We also ended up going, like, one of the first days, it was me, Rheinhold, I think, I want to say Anil8r and Gerrick, and we all went to a sushi place, which was pretty awesome. Pretty good stuff, and just kind of relaxed, talking to each other and everything. I ended up afterward, was it on this one or the next one? I think it was next one. I ended up hitting a GameStop. So, pro tip right now, GameStop is liquidating a lot of, like, PS3, Wii, and 360 games. So, if you're kind of looking for some off titles, you know, if you have one next to you, give it a shot. Because I found some pretty sweet stuff there for, you know, under $10. I even found games that were, like, under $3. So, you know, there's things that also never came out. Like, I think I got Dead Rising for, like, $4. Dead Rising 1 never came out on the PC, so, you know, I thought that was a pretty good deal on it. Alright. So, another thing that happened later on, kind of in the week, was we went to a Brazilian barbecue place with, like, a ton of people. I'm trying to remember everyone that was there. It was, like, me, Rheinhold, Gerrick, NoWorries, Stinger, PA, Vooligan, Annihilator. Oh, man. It's straining my head to figure out the other people. God, it's gone. I'm sorry, dudes. It was a really fun time, though. We got to eat a lot of really good food. Stinger PA putting away everything, basically. But it was pretty awesome to be able to chill and talk with some guys about. And what was kind of interesting about that one is that wasn't even necessarily hobby driven a lot of the time. We were just kind of shooting the shit and talking about different things happening around the event and just, you know, enjoying people's company, not just being speed nerds and talking about our games the whole time, which was pretty nice. Got to try Chicken Heart. About what I expected. I wouldn't eat many of them, but, you know, if I was offered another one or two, I wouldn't be averse to it. Interesting thing. One thing that I will say is, even though the food was delicious there, a lot of it was presented in very similar ways. Like, you'd have, like, pork, chicken, and beef teriyaki, which is all basically the same thing, you know? And it'd be, like, top sirloin, like peppered top sirloin, garlic top sirloin, like, so kind of the same stuff, just with a different topping type of thing. But it was really good. I'm glad that we went. Got to try caipirinha for the first time, which is a Brazilian drink, kind of made with sugarcane liquor, which it's different than rum, but a little bit sweeter flavor profile. And that was really nice to try, because I had heard good things about that from Anthony Bourdain, his show. Let's see. I mentioned doing a little game change. Oh, one other thing. Went to a retro store. I mentioned GameStop, but we actually went to a retro store. I ended up picking up a Killer Instinct Yoshi Story for a friend also, because, you know, those were two really good games, and, you know, I thought that he would really appreciate it. Killer Instinct, maybe not the best of games, but he's a fighting game fan like me, and, you know, I thought it would be a cool addition to his collection. Also, just before we came in, I guess, a guy who's a collector dropped off a large portion of games. And so I really debated on it, but I think I'm glad that I picked it up. I ended up getting a Silent Hill 3 complete in box, in, like, basically perfect condition, with the soundtrack and everything, for, I think, $23 when all the discounts were down. Basically around $23, which is a pretty damn good price. I did have the PC version, but I kind of wanted a console version as well. Small side note, Silent Hill Fog is best on the PS2, because the PS2 had kind of a chipset that did really well with translucent textures that no other graphics program that I'm aware of has kind of duplicated. When you're talking about PC and newer games, they tend to do particle effects a little bit differently. And the reason they kicked it out is because, you know, translucent texturing really only helps, like, smoke and fog, which are big parts of Silent Hill, not so much other games. But kind of jumping back on that, that's why I decided I would get the PS2 version instead. I remember getting a couple other games as well, but they're kind of eluding me right now. Which ones they were? I'm kind of looking around, trying to see if I remember. Oh, I got Resident Evil 4 for the PS2, which I learned later is apparently a pretty poor port of it, which is unfortunate, but I got it cheap. Yeah, I can't remember the other ones. I got a couple other games, though. So, the big thing, though, when we went to the retro game shop, so I spotted it, and I was like, huh, there's a Lunar for the Sega Saturn. I think it was Sega Saturn JP version of Lunar Complete, and it was only like $20. And that's a fantastic price. Well, let me put it this way. It was a good price, I thought, because I was like, okay, if it's Japanese version, there were probably more copies sold. So I was like, this has got to be maybe a $40 game. So Romsey, and I mentioned it, I was like, oh, that's cool, they got a Lunar, and I was like, and I kind of pointed it out, I don't know if anybody was listening, but I was like, I'm going to pass on it, because I don't own a Sega Saturn, let alone a JP modded one. You know, I didn't want to be that guy that buys up a game that somebody else could potentially use. Especially in the speedrun community. Like, there were apparently guys that had came there also, which blew my mind that nobody picked that up. Because there were at least a dozen other dudes that came there, and no one thought, like, hey, that's a great price on that game. I'll pick it up. Turns out Rom spotted it, and he ended up picking it up. And apparently it's in the neighborhood of closer to $70 to $80. And it was complete in box, well, you know, complete in jewel case. So I'm really glad that he picked it up, because, you know, that's a great game and steal of a price, it seemed like. Before we went there, actually, interesting thing, we ended up going to, or after that, we went to a Thai? I think it was a Thai sandwich shop. And that was extremely good as well. I kind of wish I'd gotten a second sandwich there. The food, when we went out and actually got food, food was fantastic. When we had to buy pizzas and stuff, that's when things kind of went downhill. That being said, I was really pleased with... So the hotel ended up having breakfast, and when I hear continental breakfast, my mind immediately goes shit. Because usually that means cereal and bagels. That's like what it means. But they actually had a really nice spread there. They ended up having like trays of bacon, trays of eggs, both like scrambled eggs and boiled eggs they had, actually, like hard-boiled eggs. Plenty of fruit, you know, nice stuff out there, which was awesome. Like, I never, even though it was the same thing pretty much every day, you know, there was like everything, you know, there's bacon, eggs, French toast, fruit, cereal if you wanted it, orange juice, water, few different types of like herbal tea and stuff. Like, it was, even though it was the same thing every day, I never felt like I was deprived. Like, it was nice to have that as kind of an anchoring point. Like, hey, every morning I can go out, get something to eat, get ready for the next day. So that was pretty nice. So kind of talking more personal people, I guess, on the hanging out section. So Rom, I didn't really get to spend as much time with him as I kind of wanted to, but you know, he has a lot of people to talk to, and he had a lot of people that he wanted to see as well, because a lot of his friends were showing up there, you know, people like PJ and stuff. You know, Essentia, Puwexil, you know, people that he had to devote his time to, let's put it that way. But, you know, we got to hang out one of the nights, got to play a little bit of Tiger Soten, he brought that along, and talk. We actually got to shoot the shit about his blindfolded run and reading kind of comments off of that with Ty and Annihilator in the room. That was pretty fun. He brought a lot of kind of fun casual stuff for people, and, you know, I always kind of seem busy also, so it's kind of like crossing paths became a little bit harder. But like I said, we ended up hanging out one of the nights. We hung out another night in Rhienhold's room, and we ended up playing a bunch of card games there with a bunch of people. Seemed like he spent a lot of time in the board game room, kind of hanging out with people as well, which was awesome. Hanging out with the Shining guys. Bowie, I didn't get to hang out with necessarily specifically a lot, but, you know, just always kind of a constant background to that. NoWorries, like I said, it was fun to pick his brain and stuff. We ended up playing a bunch of games inside of Rhienhold's room with him in there. I got to show him a little bit of Shining Tears and Shining Force, Neo, and Exa and stuff. Annihilator actually spent quite a bit of time kind of filling in time here and there. He was playing a lot of time on his Vita, but just got to kind of... It seemed like he was really interested in kind of a lot of the speedruns for the RPG stuff. And I don't know how enthralled he is with the prospect. It sounds like he might be having the same issue that a lot of people have, where it's like, they'd love to run an RPG, but it's just like, how do you find the time type of thing. DMC8r, when I got to see him, it was cool, but a lot of the time it seemed like he was hanging out with Bick and Feral Pigman, so, you know, it was kind of infrequent that I got to see him a lot. Ty2358, he got to hang out a couple of the days, got to stay for Shining Force, which was cool. It's just, I got the feeling he wanted to go out more, and so did NoWorries. But it's just, the thing that's funny is you want to go out more, and then you always end up finding stuff to do at the venue, which is something that I wanted to kind of push when I was like, I took too much stuff. Like, don't be so worried about bringing a ton of stuff. There will be things to do. There's going to be stuff you want to watch. There's going to be people you want to talk to. You're still going to have to go out and eat, stuff like that. So don't be so wrapped up with bringing a ton of stuff. Like, stuff will be there. Um, what else? Legend of Mana Crew, PX, FailX. I got to talk to them for a little bit when they were kind of prepping for stuff. PX was kind of all around the place, talking with people and stuff. WanderingMind, somebody that I guess WanderingMind was kind of an odd experience for me. So he's a guy that's very, very, very passionate about the games that he plays and about learning new things. But he also does, like, he is very, how would I put it? It's like he will keep talking. You know what I mean? If you let him, he will keep talking, which is cool to some extent. That's how some people kind of are when they're around stuff, and when they really want people to get excited with them about stuff. And it was really cool kind of talking to him about Valkyria Chronicles. That was a thing that he was spending a lot of time on. He was grinding that. He was actually doing recordings at the venue because he didn't want to get a run there and then, not have it recorded. So he was busting his butt on that. I also got to see him play Panzer Dragoon Orta, which is a great buy if you ever get a chance. And just kind of talk about things. I know he was watching Yokai Watch a little bit here and there as well. But he was a cool guy to kind of talk with. And it was really interesting to see a person that was kind of like that. He's like, it's like he was pushing so hard to have people get into his speed game, for lack of a better term. Like, he really wanted to present his speed game to people so that he could show how awesome it is. And you could get that from him. Like, you could feel that energy coming off of him. And I'm really glad, apparently recently he got kind of a run he was looking for, which was, I'm really glad for him. He was a cool guy to meet there, like, at some point I had to kind of cut him off a little bit, but like, it was really cool to be able to meet him, and I'm glad that he's had the success he's had. And I wish him the best, and hopefully I'll get to see him at another event. It'd be really cool to see that type of, how would I put it, intense happiness towards gaming again. Aether, got to kind of co-host with him when I believe it was during the Bravely Default run. Got to talk to him a little bit afterward. Pretty cool dude as well. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot to talk about some of these guys just because, like, everything that was done with them was kind of very situational. So, and, I have a terrible memory for something that happened 2 months ago if it's not something that's just, like, really standing out. I mentioned BobtheNinjaGoldfish. Like I said, great guy. Once again, just one of those people that was always kind of around that I could talk to and kind of relax and, kind of speak with about stuff. As I mentioned, Vuligen, when we did go out and kind of talk, like when we went to the Brazilian place, like, it was really cool to talk to him and see what was happening with him. Just, he's been busy all around. So I mentioned the volunteer thing. One of the big things he said is he was like, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. This is a page where if something goes wrong, look at it and see where it is. And then he's like, if you can't find what to do in like 2 to 5 minutes, call me. And he's like, I might be angry and pissed because I was sleeping, but I'd rather you call me than something to go wrong. So, like, as you can tell, it seemed like the stream went pretty well for the most part, but there were some times where he had to get interrupted and brought back down. Aussie88. So I had never seen Yokai Watch before. I knew it was kind of almost like a Pokemon light game was the way that I was seeing it. But it's a little bit different than that, and I was actually pretty pleased that I got to watch it. It's one of those games that I think I'm going to have to keep an eye on and see if I can scoop it up. Because it looked really interesting when I saw him running it in a practice room. So Reverend Miller, the Quest for Glory guy. So this is some shit. So, Quest for Glory was one of those games that everybody kind of panned, and they were like, "Why is this on the schedule? And why are we running 4 or 5 of them?" um, I'm gonna have to eat my words because I was definitely in that camp. Um, he kind of, and I found out I was hosting that. So I was like, "Fuck." I'm going to be hosting a game that like I know nothing about, that nobody was really like, it wasn't really on their radar. You know, again, people had this questioning thing like, why is there 4 of these games in here? You know, why are we doing this? You know what? That guy, it kind of sucked because I wanted, okay, so here's the thing. I wanted to watch a run from it so I could at least get an idea of where the pacing was for the game. Turns out that unfortunately Reverend Miller wasn't able to come until basically like the day before his run. So I only caught very little of the run and kind of only caught one run of it before I had to be on and host. That being said, they ended up having the devs for the game on the call as well. So that made my job of hosting quite a bit easier because they seem to have a pretty good flow of conversation. Sorry, I'm kind of like scratching my leg. They seem to have a pretty good flow of conversation, but more than that, like, that was a pretty cool run to watch, actually. And you know why we had 4 of them? Because they're all fairly short games once you cut out a lot of the fluff. And just to be able to have the devs on there and to be able to hear Miller kind of commentate on things, like, he did a really fantastic job of drawing attention to the games in other places. Not because you know what? If you're doing a point-and-click adventure game, it's going to feel really dull unless your commentary can point out things about the game that are interesting, or funny quirks of the game, or interesting stories that you had, interesting developments, things that are odd, how players were intended to play versus how you do play. And he did an excellent job of really pushing that along with the developers in order to turn this game, this genre, this point-and-click style of genre, into something that was enjoyable to watch. You know, because like I said, at the end of the day, like, it is an RPG. It does have RPG elements, but it's a point-and-click game. So if you can present a game like that in a manner that is intriguing to people, that makes them care about the game, that shows how strong of a presentation that game had. And you know, like I said, I have to eat my words because, you know, like, while I don't think it should be at every RPG limit break, it did a fantastic job at this one. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Dragondarch. Sorry about that. Probably bumped the mic a little bit. So, Dragondarch, Mr. Entire plate of bacon and French toast every morning. So, the Dragondarch, he was actually probably one of the people that I was interested in meeting, and I was not very disappointed. So he was running Draken, which is notoriously a very brutal game and very jank. If you haven't seen that run, go watch that run. All 2 parts of it. Some interesting stuff happens in it. The first thing that I remember for Dragondarch was, I think I saw him running Draken, and I just kind of sat down because I had a little bit of time, and I like to talk to people about their games a little bit and get an idea of it, because you know what? If you don't know about a game, you're not going to find it interesting. And Draken's one of those games where a lot of people have talked about it being a terrible game, but nobody's really talked about what's interesting about it. And there's a lot of interesting things in Draken. Aside from the stuff in the speed tech, just like presentation-wise, what they tried to accomplish on a SNES cart is unbelievable. But it was really cool kind of discussing things and just talking about the stupid jank that's in Draken, like how you gain experience when you're in a room. Like, okay, so when you enter a room, you get experience. There's a room in the game, at least one, that's bugged, so that it gives you tons of experience every frame. So there was a part in the run where he literally just sits in a room for like 2 minutes because it'll give him a ton of experience. It's hilarious. and just seeing him like kind of mess around with that. MetaSigma was kind of another tertiary player to that. He was kind of around every once in a while, and he got to kind of joke around with the games and everything too. So it was kind of cool to see the interaction with them. Also, I saw they were playing Earth Defense Force as well, which I got to watch a little bit of because that's kind of one of those guilty pleasure games that are interesting. Yeah, it was hilarious. But I got to see Dragondarch more or less most of the time. He was in like the breakfast place, and like I said, that's one of the biggest things that stands out to me that I remember was just basically every morning he'd just have a plate of French toast, like just that French toast, and then he'd just have like a plate of bacon, just like that tall. Just to each their own, But I just thought it was kind of hilarious, like every time that I'd see him on the morning. But we got to have some interesting conversations on there as well. He also got to hang out with the Shining Force guys, Rheinhold and Gerrick, one of the nights. Like I said, Rheinhold graciously gave him a Yeti to kind of stream with, which was cool. I got to talk to him briefly, particularly about so I know one of my other stream friendos, Houseless Gamer, was interested in like Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness for Castlevania, so I got to talk to him a little bit about that. Did a run of Soten, and I remember him asking so how much or how fast do you mash? And I was like, I don't know, I've never been put on a hertz counter, so that's like a very minor thing, but it just, again, for some reason these are the things that stick out to me. But it was really cool to be able to meet him. He was probably one of the highlights of kind of like the new people I met as well. As I mentioned, MetaSigma kind of second fiddle on there with Dragondarch. A lot of the times they hung out a lot, and he was pretty fun to watch when they were interacting with each other and talking. A guy with a lot of energy. Wells. So WellsJc. And I guess I should put RyuBasteon in this as well. Two of the guys that were kind of part of the Shining community through the chat and stuff. Another pair of guys that I think really helped make the weekend for a lot of people. I didn't get it as much from them, but I know they definitely were around, like, making things happen, helping drive people around, really spur conversations, get people talking with one another, and just giving an enjoyable experience from a group of guys that aren't necessarily like super speedrunning guys, they're kind of just more of a community chat type of thing, but they did a lot to make everybody feel very welcome, and a couple of interesting guys to have conversations with. I know with Ryu, I had a couple of discussions regarding tabletop RPGs, which is a little bit of a passion for mine that I haven't been able to indulge in recently, but just kind of talking about different things outside of speedrunning as well was pretty cool to see both of them. So shout outs to WellsJc and Ryu for showing up and being a part of the community, even though they didn't have to. They didn't have, some of the people on here didn't have runs. Like Annihilator didn't have a run inside of there. Rheinhold, Gerrick, Rom, all of these guys didn't have runs inside of this, but they showed up because they wanted to be with the community and their friends and everything. So that's pretty cool to be able to have that much presence from people that make you feel comfortable at an event. As for people I missed, unfortunately, PJ. So PJ is one of those guys where I would love to be able to meet him and kind of pick his brain on stuff and hang out. Sinister, another person. Sinister One actually showed up a couple days. I figured that was kind of going to be something that happened because he's part of the Twitch speedrun community manager team. Both of them kind of fit in the same category, I guess. Both of them obviously very well beloved by the community. Probably had a lot of people talking to them, a lot of people trying to discuss stuff. And PJ in particular was also focused on getting through games. He didn't have a lot of days to spend there. He actually ended up leaving about halfway through the event. So, I was like, you know what, I'll swallow my pride and, let them be with their friends because... So, slight side note. I keep doing these, but slight side note. These events are sometimes there are people that only get to see their friends maybe 2 or 3 times a year at these events. I would feel like the biggest shit if I felt entitled to talk to somebody just because I wanted to, when they are trying to spend time with these people that they only get to see every once in a while. And, you know, there's a lot of people that are trying to vie for their time as well and kind of talk to them and stuff. So, like, even though I wanted to speak with them and stuff, it's just the timing was never right. Either they were busy or I was busy. But, you know, it was cool to see them at the event. And, you know, maybe I'll end up catching them another time. Spike Vegeta, kind of the same category as the other two. Spike Vegeta is kind of interesting because he's a very outspoken person inside of the community. Tends to cross over with a lot of communities as well, which is another reason he's kind of very popular. He did end up doing hosting for Shining Force, which was excellent because I think that really helped bolster our energy and kind of the interest inside of the game to have a really knowledgeable host and somebody that's experienced. So that was cool. Essentia, obviously one of the main people kind of helping to run the event, kind of our liaison in Colorado, so she had to do a lot of work along with her husband. So I didn't really get to talk to her. I got to talk to her briefly, you know, see how she was doing. I know she had been having a little bit of health problems on Twitter. So, you know, I was glad to see that she seemed in good health when she was there. But I know that she was kind of all over the place because, you know, her kids were there as well. And, you know, she recently announced that she was going to have another kid. So, you know, I imagine that it's a very draining experience to have that much on your plate. So, you know, I only got to talk to her a little bit. Geyer, same thing with him. I got to talk to him a little bit because I was interested in the Dragon Warrior run on Game Boy Color, and I did that a little bit for a 12-hour challenge. So I wanted to prick his brain a little bit about that and talk to him a bit. We talked briefly on that and on Final Fantasy 1 on the GBA, since that's what he was running. And I said I would touch bases with him again, but that unfortunately that just never materialized particularly. But I was really pleased to talk to him for a bit, even for a small time. So, PinkPajamas, once again, I mentioned how I really wanted to talk to him more and pick his brain, but yet another person which just schedules conflicted a lot. But I did get to see him a little bit. I know he was in the streaming room, he was practicing Disgaea on a Hatsune Miku stick that was like a rhythm pad, and it was hilarious because he was like, yeah, this analog stick, because it has more of a range of motion, he was actually able to scroll across the screen faster. So it was kind of silly to see like how much faster this like third-party stick was at moving the cursor, which is hilarious. But I got to originally I was supposed to sit in for Disgaea, but I ended up missing the early part of it because they started early, I guess. But I sat in. If you see maybe about an hour in there, I go ahead and I sit down and I relax, and you know, I'll make a little quip here and there in the background, but for the most part, I was just enjoying the atmosphere, watching him run. He seemed to be having a good time. Probably the biggest person that I missed, Jiseed. I'll be honest, like, I don't hang out in his chat much, or I didn't when he was running Phantasy Star 4, because it'd be a conflict of time a lot of the time, like I'd be trying to do something else. But I would definitely love to be able to talk to Jiseed about Phantasy Star 4, because that's one of those games that I mentioned where I was interested in maybe routing it. And him along with a couple other people really helped push that game to be a fantastic speed game, I think. And I would have loved to have been able to sit in and watch the run and like talk to him and stuff, but just didn't really work out as much. He had one of the most nail-biting moments. If you want to see what makes an RPG exciting, watch like the last 10 minutes of his run. His final boss is like one of the most nail-biting things at the event, I think. Okay. So, a couple other things. Man, this thing is going on a while. This is going to be longer than my California-thon recap. Parasite Eve. So, Parasite Eve. Leading up to the event, I ended up making an adapted route that put in saves and took some extra items. Glad I did that. During the lead up to the event, I was dying to the dumbest things, like damage ranges I had never seen before. I remember getting bit by the wolf in or by Cerberus. Shiva. Idiot. I got bit by Shiva for like 91 damage. And I got bit from her from across the screen. Like, I was like, okay, I'm across the screen, she's gonna laser. No. She lunged the full screen length, corner to corner, and crit me, and did more damage than I thought was possible at 91. So, seeing stuff like that the entire 2 weeks that I was heavily prepping was pretty disheartening. And more disheartening was I was forgetting to save, which I knew that I absolutely had to do or I was going to be in trouble. Luckily, when it actually came to the run itself, I managed to save. Commentary was very strong throughout, and it was great to have Puwexil on board, somebody that's very knowledgeable in a ton of games and can really kind of quickly talk about subjects without getting too wordy. I think that might be one of my downfalls sometimes as a commentator, is sometimes I'll get a little bit too wordy, especially with like Soten on explaining things. I'd like to think that personally I tried to really push not just like running commentary, but also kind of casual commentary and a little bit on the history of the game, which was nice. As for the run itself, pretty good in general. Terrible luck on the museum. Museum enemies were running away from me left and right. And then Centipede was definitely pretty rough. I would say Centipede was half my fault, half RNG. I really should have been able to dodge a few of the things, but circumstances just kind of... So, like, it was half my fault because I put myself in the situation, but once I put myself in the situation, I got no leeway. Like, the game was kind of against me at that point. But I was able to clutch out Centipede. Hopefully that was exciting for some people. But other than that, pretty solid altogether. I got to swag a little bit at the end of the game by looking at the broken phone during the Ultimate Bean chase scene, which was pretty fun. I think Puwexil thought that I was just joking, and then it actually happened, and if you look at the video, you can see his expression change just slightly when I go to the phone and actually look at it. But that was fun to do. Coming to Shining Force 2, what can I say about this? So, I guess here's a good place to start. There were people that came up to us, a fair amount of them, that said, if that wasn't the best commentary of the year for RPG Limit Break, it was like the second best. Like, behind Kingdom Hearts. So, to be put in that type of esteemed company with people that have so much more experience in commentary and are so much more popular and in general more energetic, stuff like that, to be put as even second best to that is fantastic. I'm really pleased with how things worked out. I mentioned the talking over people in the original relay race. My original plan was I thought we were going to be behind the couch commentating. So I was like, okay, I'm going to get a board. And this is kind of an esports thing. So let's say you have a bunch of people and you don't want to talk over each other. What you do is you have one person has the board or whatever. They're the one that leads the conversation. If somebody wants to say something, they put their hand on the board. And usually you have like a system. You have like maybe like 1, 2, 3. And you might go like 1 is a commentary on what's happening. 2 is mechanical. 3 is time sensitive. Like, I need to say this now. Something like that. And what will happen is the board person will point to that person, or they'll put their hand on that person's hand to let them know they should talk. That was the plan. We were in front of the couch, so that kind of went out the window. That being said, we were made aware fairly early that there was going to be room for 4 mics. We had 2 runners that meant 2 commentators. With that in mind, we were able to do a 3 commentary team. And that's the format that I went with. I personally went as the question guy a lot of the time, kind of directing flow and stuff. I let the other 2 guys kind of be shoutcasters and technical guys as much as I could. Spike Vegeta did an excellent job as host, and tried to show a little bit of enthusiasm, and seemed like it was pretty genuine, and seemed like he enjoyed it as well. Really, really strong run. I mean, if you watch it, I really try to push how insane some of the stuff that happened in there was. The fact that the fact that fight 1 went pretty much perfectly is crazy. We ended up, so no worries on the last fight on Grand Seal Island with the dark smokes. 4 misses and he didn't wipe or lose anybody important is, like, I don't even know. Like, that doesn't happen, let alone in a marathon. Like, that really showed just how much time and effort he put in the game to understand that stuff. The battle before it, he put Arby's into a position where I thought he was dead. I was like, why is he doing this? He actually ends up living with 1 HP. Just because he knows the game that much in and out that he knows he can take that risk. Another side note. So some of the people might have noticed that I plugged Zexxxxxx, who's a former Soten community member who unfortunately died pretty close to the event. So obviously, J-Hobbs couldn't have known like that was going to happen. So he put all the money in, on the fast food things, which is funny. There was a group of people in the Shining community when I mentioned the whole Zexxxxxx thing. They put their wallets out there. And they made it happen to get Peter named Zexxxxxx, which is, they didn't have to do that, but they did. Like, they could have easily just been like, Chipotle's gonna carry the day. Kept the fast food thing. But, that's important. That's important to me. That they were willing to go buy into something for somebody that, like, even though I'm a part of the community, I'm not the guy anchoring them down, I'm not the runner, I'm not anything like that. But they were willing to put down that money, that time, down to do something as a good gesture, a gesture of good faith. And that was really awesome of them. I don't want to go too much more on it. Hopefully they understand that did mean a lot to me. So, what else for Shining Force 2? Run went fantastic, like I said. The times where things went bad, we were able to, like, the times where things went bad, they played out of their minds and got out of it. Like I said, the fact that No Worries got into some of those situations and nothing went bad was crazy. Pretty much the only thing that was a little bit off was the second to last battle with Galam. Bowie kind of struggled with. And I think that was just a matter of, it's a fairly new strat. And, we had already been running the game for like 5 hours. So it's, let alone however long he had been up before that. So, your brain gets a little fried after that much time. So, maybe he just wasn't able to focus, or maybe he was just forgetting a couple key things about it. But, and he wanted to do it smooth. He didn't want to make safety saves, so that kind of hurt him a little bit as well. I'm blown away that, so at the end of the run, you'll hear me go, why don't you just diesel this guy, use the Sword of Darkness? I have no fucking clue how that came to my head. Like, the fact that I was able to just go, yeah, that's something you should do. And it was absolutely the right move. Like, there's no way Lemon was going to kill that Pyro Worm. If the Pyro Worm lived, then it was probably either going to kill Lemon or kill him in the second turn. The fact that he got the diesel and killed it was actually pretty important. So I was pretty happy that I was able to do that. But yeah, commentary kicked ass, play kicked ass. We had an extremely good showing. Pretty much most of the Shining friends were able to make it to the event. We got to talk a lot about the history, how much we cared about the game, and everything. It was just great. I know it was really important to me. I guess something I can mention about Bowie is Bowie actually had a pretty emotional time with Final Fantasy Adventure as well. So if that's something you missed, you might want to check that out, because that's a game that means a lot to him. And he mentioned how, like, even though Shining Force was really important to him as well, you know, like, he was doing it with other people, like the community was there. Final Fantasy Adventure was kind of like his game to shine, which was cool. Also of note, Bowie is a jerk and can't do 24 push-ups apparently, because that kid that kid wussed out on 17 super hard. And I'm never gonna let him live it down. But yeah, that was the funny part is earlier in it, he was like, "We're doing 5 push-ups for every miss, right?" Like, you couldn't even fucking do the 24. But yeah, it was fun though. The finale, if you guys didn't catch the finale, something that you should catch. It's not that long. A couple people had some really heartwarming things to say. People that stood out. WanderingMind. Bob had a really kind of impassioned speech as well. I kind of talked briefly about how awesome it was to be a part of this RPGLB break because of the games that were shown, and we got to come together as a community and, you know, kind of thank the games committee for allowing Shining Force to be shown. Because, like I said, if I mentioned Quest for Glory, there were a lot of people that were skeptical. I could say that there were more than a few people that were skeptical about putting Shining Force on as well, because, again, that's a game that isn't the most well-known game. And it's a long game. It was the second longest game, I think, in the marathon. But they stuck their necks out there and they were like, this is a game that the community has pushed so hard and done so much, we should show it and show what they've done. And I'm really pleased that they were willing to kind of put themselves out there for us and really allow us to shine. What else? Trying to think. Oh, so DMC8r, another thing. Seiken Densetsu 3. They did a really strong job of that. I didn't get to catch all of it. I got to catch a little bit at the end and stuff. But I know they were... DMC and Feral Pigman were working really hard during the course of the week with practice and stuff just to get ready for it. And they did a really good job of that as well, which was sweet. Let's see. So yeah, that was the finale. Also, at the end of it, I did get to do an interview. I was trying to get a few people. I asked around because it was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. I tried to get some footage for a Talking Turbo episode 3. I managed to get Puwexil to sit down with me. It's a little bit more serious of an interview, I would say. Like maybe a little less fun, but it was still pretty interesting. I'm in the middle of kind of setting that up and getting it edited. Because it was such short notice, I didn't get to really, you know, specialize things towards the interview. But it was cool to be able to talk with Puwexil and get his opinions on certain things, talk speedrunnings, talk life with him. So look forward to that. I'm still working on the Vuligin one. I got set back on that quite a bit because I was waiting for a response on it, on a question from him. But I just decided to just go with it. I think he'll be okay, and I'll show him the final cut anyway. Cool thing for Puwexil is I managed to have 2 cameras running, so I should be able to add a little bit of visual variety, which is something that I definitely wanted. And then, yeah, you know, like, with that one, it was kind of funny because we set it up for a certain time of the day, and stuff just kept coming up, so it kept getting pushed further and further back, which was a little frustrating, but, I mean, like, I did what I could to make it work. I had, like, a laptop. I had to, like, move some chairs to hold cameras, stuff like that. But we made it happen. And hopefully he had a fun experience with it as well. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, just caught my flight back, got home, had a blast at RPG Limit Break. Definitely felt like it was the same vibe as Californiathon, just kind of a smaller event, a lot more interaction with people. It's really cool. I'm looking forward to hopefully going again. The biggest thing that hurt me was just, the amount of money it took, but as far as events go, I mean, I really enjoyed it. And who knows, like, I've been really pushing to see if I can find a speed game that I could submit for the next RPG Limit Break. I've been kind of struggling with that, but, we're beyond that. We'll figure that stuff out, But hopefully you guys enjoyed the recap. I'll try and post this on YouTube. See if I can link it to some irrelevant people. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I know it's been a long time, and I should have done this quite a bit before, but things kind of jumping in. But, hopefully you guys enjoyed this recap. I will see you another time.